Susanna Wesley. I don't think I'll ever marry because I could never find such a woman as my father had. These are the words of John Wesley as a young boy regarding his mother, Susanna Wesley. Susanna struggled through many trials in her life. 9 of her children tragically died before they reached adulthood, while her husband, Samuel Wesley, was imprisoned twice because of debt. Through great hardship, she remained faithfully committed to God and her family until she passed away at age 73. Susanna Wesley was born on a cold winter day, January 20th, 1669, in London, England. Born to Reverend Samuel Annesley and his wife, Mary, she was the youngest child of the 25 Annesley children. At the age of 19, she married a friend of her father's, Samuel Wesley. They married in 1689 and moved to lovely Epworth, England. Because Samuel was in debt to many people, the villagers of Epworth disliked the Wesleys, setting fire to their crops and abusing their livestock. On February 10, 1690, Susanna gave birth to her first child. Naming him Samuel Wesley after his father. Later, John and Charles were born, who would grow up to become the fathers of Methodism. Susanna raised her children strictly. Eating and drinking between meals was prohibited unless the child was ill. They were also taught to weep softly and gratefully eat what was placed before them. If a child disobeyed or did not follow the rules, he or she would be spanked with a rod. However, this could be avoided if the child confessed their faults. When Susanna was stressed or wanted time alone with God, she would rest in her favorite chair and pull her apron over her head to pray and study the scriptures. When her children observed her in this posture, they knew she was not to be disturbed. Susanna, who educated the Wesley children, taught them to read and write at age 5. Astonishingly, she educated her girls, which at that time was uncommon. In 1709, the family experienced a devastating house fire. Young John Wesley was distressingly trapped in the home's basement. Thankfully, he was rescued. After that, Susanna kept a close eye on little John. Because Samuel, Susanna's husband, was a pastor, Susanna took on many of the church duties, one of which was hosting a weekly Bible study. As a woman of deep faith, she encouraged her son, John Wesley, to become a deacon. Following his mother's advice, John became a deacon in 1725. Sadly, about 10 years later, on April 23rd, 1735, Susanna's husband devastatingly passed away. Susanna was deeply grieved. Since she was now a widow and growing older, she went to live with her son, John, in 1739, who had purchased a building called the Foundry, which he used as a meeting house and living quarters. Her health began to fail just a few years later, and on July 23rd, 1742, Susanna left this world and entered the presence of her Lord and Savior at the age of 73. She was buried in London, England, at Bun Hill Fields gravesite. John Wesley led her funeral, while Charles Wesley, who was Susanna's 18th child, crafted her tombstone. Presumably, Susanna Wesley had a much different childhood than most children today. She had 24 older siblings and was married at the age of 19. Uniquely, Susanna herself had 19 children. Sadly, 9 died in infancy, as was common for that day. As she grew older and her children moved on, her beloved husband passed away after 46 years of marriage. Significantly, Susanna displayed patience and faith through many tragic trials, while being a loving and devoted wife and mother who raised 2 great men renowned in church history. These men were John and Charles Wesley, who were founders of a revival movement called Methodism. Susanna's life of prayer and devotion can be summed up in her own words. There are 2 things to do about the gospel: believe it and behave it.